Does your wife ever say to you something like, Dan, stop messing with all these demons and just come home?
Yeah, for sure.
Talk about that. I mean, not many lay people have the experience in these things like you do. So I want you to tell us about, how does this affect you personally? And then I want you to get into telling us about your fascinating biography, your everything from your fighting background, your military background, and how in the world you ended up in all this before we get to all the detailed questions.
So I was at the beginning in our local team. I was the dirty jobs guy, and really the work of in this business, the work is really the dirty jobs for the diocese. You know, it's kind of the cosmic garbage men, if you will. As Father Ripperger says, working in this business, and I'm just a lay person that supports the priest. I'm hero support. You know, the lay people work in support of the hierarchical church, the diocese, the bishop, and the mandated exorcist. But as Father Ripperger says, that working in deliverance or in exorcism specifically, it's like being at the end of a sewage pipe. You know, you're downrange of sewage, but occasionally, you know, that woman drops her wedding band and a wedding diamond into the sink, and it goes into the drain and it comes out on the other side, and you're like, wow, there's sometimes stuff comes through that's just fascinating and beautiful. You see the glory. The first time we were first session that we ever had, I was expecting Hollywood stuff, and really what I saw was just the power and authority of the church and the priesthood. And the sacraments and the holiness, when we talk about a priest's hands as anointed, going back to Exodus 28, anoint his hands, what does that mean? You see it in real space and real time. Cosmically, you get like when I was a pilot, we would fly with night vision goggles, and the whole world was green and dark shades of green, depending on the light, ambient light that reflects. The new ones now, you'll see a red tone because they pick up heat, and so you see this varying shades, and you kind of start seeing the church, the mystical body, the Blessed Mother. You start to see the cosmic realm, the spiritual realm, in a whole different light. So one of the first jobs I had, I was just taking out. I was the guy that destroyed all the cursed stuff that we got, and so. One time we had these remember the cursed rosary thing that's kind of going around Catholic circles. So somebody had shipped a case of these glow-in-the-dark rosaries, and because Catholics love those, and so they shipped a case of these things to the local parish, the church, and they realized that they had satanic symbols on them. So so the church lady decides, I'm going to take these things and I'm going to just burn them in my fireplace, which was not the right thing to do. So her whole house smokes out. Fire department shows up. She takes them back to the parish. The priest says, he gives them to the exorcist. Exorcist he gives them to me and take care of them. So I'm down in a public place down by a river, and I'm going to destroy these things. And I got Gregorian chant over here. I got holy water. I'm doing prayers of reparation. And ultimately, when you see what evil is, it's blasphemy against the true God, And so I'm burning these things. I got my vehicle over here. I've got the music's going, Gregorian chant. I'm praying. These things are taking forever. And all of a sudden, these dogs come running out of the woods, out of nowhere, and just started coming. They started surrounding me, and I'm just sitting there with a shovel, So I start fighting these dogs. I start praying to St. Michael.
Oh my gosh.
And the next thing you know, this lady comes out, kind of druid dressing, and she looks at me. The dogs she didn't say a word, but the dogs just jump in behind her and walk away, So wind shifting, I smell like smoke. I got a gallon of holy water, and I'm like, I'm not bringing this garbage into my house. You know what I mean? So I take the clothes and I take my holy water, dump the holy water on my clothes. I walk into the house, but I strip totally. And I walk into the kitchen. So I've got my prayers of reparation, gallon of holy water. I got my phone going with Gregorian chant, stark naked, walk into the kitchen. My wife looks at me and she said, "What have I married?" And she just turned and walked away. I'm like, I could explain. So you learn how to protect yourself. You have to.
You fight in Iraq and never have to come home naked.
I never came home naked in Iraq.
But you have to.
Yeah.
your first incident with the demons, you have to come home naked.
Yeah. Now, since then, we've learned, hey, this is your garbage. You destroy it. So now we just train them to do it. But back then, as our protocol developed, we learned the hard way how to do this stuff, So you have to just be very careful. I mean, the demon recognizes us, our vulnerabilities. He sees us in our sins. That's what he sees. When we show up in his radar, it's kind of like that movie Predator, in a sense. He sees our sinfulness. That's what shows out to him. That's what stands out.
How is it that a holier person, lay and priest, are more effective in this whole thing than someone who's less holy, for lack of a better word? I don't even have the right words for this question.
Yeah, so we know that the exorcism is sacramental. It's not a sacrament. It's a blessing, if you will. It's part of the extension of the sacramental and prayer life of the church. And so the sacraments work ex opere operato and ex opere operantis, if you remember your theology. Objectively, the work as it's worked, the sacraments do what they purport to do, as Christ says, and the church continues the work through the sacraments objectively.
So a sinful priest still has transubstantiation done, right?
Yeah,
His holiness doesn't affect
Augustine battled the Donatists and said, but the Donatists said only the holiness of the priest depends on the efficacy of the sacraments. No,
right, I remember.
But
that.
Subjectively, ex opere operantis, the work as it's working, we receive more or less grace. You have the lady goes and does a holy hour. She fasts for 12 hours, does a holy hour before Mass. She receives body, blood, soul, divinity. She receives Jesus objectively, but subjectively, she receives more than the guy who's only there because his wife nagged him to go to Mass. He's only, he's got the football game and is listening here. He's not paying attention. He's checking the score on his phone or texting. They both receive objectively the same amount of grace, but one person receives more because of subjective preparation. So the sacramentals work a principle called ex opere operantis ecclesiae, the work as it's working of the church or in the church, and so which says that the sacramentals specifically in the prayer of the church is effective based upon the level of holiness of those who are doing the work. And so that principle applies to exorcism. Exorcisms are more or less effective. I mean, it's the church, it's Christ who demands, but it's the holiness of the priest helps, and that helps the efficacy of that sacramental. And so, we see this in session. I've seen the demon will say, "There's lust in this room. Nobody's fasting," telling us, he doesn't want to give us why he's not leaving, but he smells it in us,
But doesn't he also lie?
He does lie.
So you really don't know whether he's lying or not.
It's interesting because we hear that a lot. And so it's kind of like, I was involved, not directly, but, we were the tip of the spear. We were in the cavalry, so we were the first unit that went into Iraq, ground unit in Desert Storm. And so we captured a lot of Iraqi prisoners. And so mostly voluntarily surrendering, but some not as voluntarily. But when you interrogate a prisoner, the military police will tell you, and law enforcement will tell you, there's a kind of a bell curve. At the beginning, they resist, and then they start telling you what you need to hear. But then they start lying just to tell you what they think you want to hear, so they can stop getting waterboarded or whatever they're doing. I'm not advocating for waterboarding. You know what I'm saying? I'm using my analogy. So when a demon is in session, it's like they're being spiritually waterboarded. Now these are creatures far superior to you and I, far superior, but they're under duress by the commands of a priest, and so they start to reveal stuff, and then over time, then they do deceive. And you take it with a grain of salt. I mean, at the end of the day, it's spade work. The priest just does the work, but they do start to reveal certain things to the priest at his command.
Hey, thanks guys for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it. And I appreciate that very much.